Hi, everybody.
Hello, nation and abroad.
And happy birthday
Firstly,
to Amber today.
happy birthday, Amber! You
Happy
are
birthday to
such a
Amber.
She's
such a beautiful
celebrating.
soul. Mwah! Love to your grandparents and all your ancestors, and you have a great day lined up. So have so much fun, sweetie. And Chase.
So
Yeah, have
today
a great
is
time.
October 21st, and it is my daughter Elena's birthday. And
Oh,
let's try to make it a really good show for her.
okay.
Okay, Elena or Elena?
Elena.
Elena. Happy birthday, Elena. Yes, beautiful. It's a
Two
beautiful day.
birthdays. Two birthdays today. Well, speaking of kids and grandkids and all that, today the CDC approved the vaccinations for kids. And it's kind of like they're saying, all the comments were all negative, and I know that because I reviewed over 20,000 of them last time. It was like 98% were negative, and I'm sure these were just as many and just as negative. There was a over 100,000.
I'm sure as well.
Yeah, but they don't have to listen. The vote was 12-0, I think, or whatever. It was all to zero. Every single person didn't listen to any of the input from the parents. You're on mute,
So when
Tara.
you say every single person, what every single
Of,
person of
of
what
the
group?
voters, the
Okay.
people on the CDC that got the vote.
So but it's like I don't know where we're going to you know, I have a very strong feeling of our reaction to that, but
Hmm.
like how can these for-profit organizations that pretend like they are somehow the government or the governing force because they have these deals, NGO, whatever the heck their deal is, and they have this like false sense of authority that they really don't have. It's like where in our constitution says like this for-profit company can just come and say, "Oh yeah, we're gonna experiment on your children, and you can't say no," blah blah blah. Like,
Well,
what kind of insanity is it?
it's more than just experimenting on the children. Actually, once they get it passed that it's required in the schedule for kids, that means that the no liability that they have now because of the EUA goes away, and they can have an approved thing with, and there's no liability forever as long as it's on the childhood vaccination schedule for adults, for anybody. So that's the trick. It's all a bunch of.
Do you guys know how did they do that trick?
They did that trick in
Well, that's one thing that
1986.
we're going to have to do a special series at least twice a week in which we go step by step covering from 1952 till today how we got
Mhm.
here.
That's a
and
good
and it's
idea.
important that everybody has their facts aligned, because you can't protest if you don't know exactly what you're protesting against. So we're going to do this synchronization with the Constitution, with our march through the Constitution, and how did we go from the country that everybody around the world wanted to come to what we have now.
It happened so quickly, and I think it has to do with forgetting. I think that we're just fed a line that this is okay and this is the rules based orders, and it's like fake it till you make it. It doesn't matter that it really isn't and that we know it. It doesn't matter to the ones who are, whoever they are, making these decisions. We don't matter at all. We're not part of um the people who matter. We're not an organization officially. We're individuals, and individuals are cut out of the decision making process in their new world order.
And that's really because individuals hold so much power. Because when you have individuals coming together in networks, it's very complicated. It's complicated to
Hmm.
unravel. And so Therefore, everyone doesn't have to like share the same exact viewpoint, because we don't, perspective wise, to in order to communicate and like try to, co-understand each other. But I think it's like even more manipulative, because it's when you put the intent, like anytime you layer the intent over any of this stuff, and I don't mean the majority of we the people, I'm just talking about the organized tactics against us. Like the intent is not just like, oh whoops, we left the door open, Cena left the door open, just whatever. You can have like an umbrella way of looking at like the deviousness that is behind almost every aspect that makes you go
Hmm. Yeah, or how did this happen? It's like all of a sudden you wake up and you're in the dystopia, and you don't know how you got there. I think, and most people haven't even noticed they're there yet, but more and more people are noticing we're somewhere we don't want to be. And yeah, how did it happen? It's just sort of a mystery. But we know by studying it, a lot of it is tricks of language. And I saw a TV commercial that or something on the YouTube. I don't know what it was. It was late at night. It just kind of came up, but it was aimed at children, and it was talking about just this language that it was like, what is this? And I read an article on Global Research that talks about um, this whole idea of the global brain, which I've kind of been digging into a little bit, and the manipulation to get us to get there. And one of the things in this article it talked about was um, the way language, what did they call it? Intellectual camouflages, and that they called it, and that's what we were calling word salad, kind of how it you're saying words that you accept and believe in, but they're put together in this really crafty way where they mean the opposite thing. And it goes into some of this language. It's called a swindle dictionary in this article. And it's just what I saw in this TV thing aimed at kids. But it says for promoting memory deletion, they call it to unlearn to learn. So you unlearn to learn. You have to forget in order to get this new angle going. And for convincing people to use brain nanobots is okay. They call it innovation, biological innovation, and kind of the whole idea of evolution. Like this is inevitable, and isn't this weird plan? But they use the word implants, calling them excellent, and that the human beings are becoming more excellent. That's another word. They use the word creativity it gives you more creativity to be excellent, and there's a better attitude involved in this evolution idea, which is really accepting permanent espionage with this brain thing. And the connect idea, they explain that privacy is out. It's the knowledge society. We need this divergent thinking, lateral thinking, observatories, transparency, and hiving thought is something that is being promoted. There's some other words here. Mindfacture, smart city is one of those words. We've obviously been seeing that. Brain circulation is the idea of convincing a person of being a cyborg, or creative destruction. I think we've heard about that. Creative destruction. You have to tear it all down in order to move forward. And that's what's happening to the whole society.
Well, when I
And
first
then,
heard of smart city, I thought it was a great idea. I thought, who wants to live in a dumb city, right?
right,
But
exactly.
it's always in the linguistics. People
Mm-hmm.
want to feel smart, so they put these monikers, they put these nicknames on their projects to make everyone feel like hey, oh, that's for me. I don't want to be in a dumb city. I want to be in a smart city.
Yeah.
Or creative. What was the other word you used? Creative what? Creative
Um, Creative destruction. Yeah. That,
destruction.
yeah, creative
Yeah,
destruction.
that sounds pretty cool. I like that idea.
Yeah. And then there's some other stuff. The academic tools are like neuros specialties, neuro law, neuro management, neuro education. And it's about living in a virtual reality world, which is what we're kind of being funneled into. Uh, so it's for living in a digital ghetto. And that's the new word for that is called community. We accept that. So for accepting being a digital slave, they're calling the millenniums. And millenniums are proud to be millenniums, in terms of like, I'm a boomer and I like being a boomer. But now it's kind of being a digital, twisted to being a digital slave. And the idea of social responsibility is like spying on everybody.
Yeah.
So you have to hold people accountable to this thing that is social responsibility, that is the greater good, which
It's not.
means, yeah, it's just a twisting of everything.
Yeah, and you know what? There's something that is just so ubiquitous right now and what they're trying to push on people. But speaking of on the word, I think it's better the word salad, whatever the other one you use. But those terms are great, Carol. I mean, they just say so much. I don't have a pen right now, but um, I just think that when we're talking about equality, which is one of the things that we've considered a great thing, and we still do, but now to turn it into this term equity, okay?
Hmm.
So equity is a banking term, and it basically equals leverage. So they're training people
And
right now.
ownership, equity. If you have equity in a company, you have ownership.
Exactly, you have ownership. So they're
Mhm.
basically telling people that you can use these intersectional victim roles in order to have leverage in society. Not, and it's not like when you're talking leverage in banking is very like numbers, and it's very like, when they transfer that into something that's not calculable, and the lines are very like non-specific. It's like, oh, equity. So it becomes like you can all of a sudden jump into any situation and be like, well, I have leverage on that because blah 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 blah. You know what I mean? So and it's a similar
Yeah.
reason why they use the word cisgender, which is CIS, and that's a chemistry term. So a chemistry term of like um sort of the different things coming together is like a CIS. So again, you're taking like a biologically a chemistry term, and you're putting it onto these like social constructs that don't make any sense. They don't translate. And I saw this awesome guy. I wish I had sent it to you guys. He's kind of like swearing, but he's like an older black guy, and he's kind of, I don't know if he's in a wheelchair, but he's definitely older. And he's like, I've done in my life like calculations and math and all these understanding of like the binary thing or whatever. He's like, when you're saying like people are saying binary, he's like, what the F does that mean? He's like, seriously, what the F does that mean? And it's like and then you think about how much these terms are thrown into people's psyche, so that, yeah, like you're saying, younger people are just like
Mhm.
building the vocabulary and their worldview around these really like twisted ideas.
Yeah, I just went into my state statistics. I wanted to kind of look at the death statistics because there's been a lot of talk about that. And it was all about, you couldn't compare the years. You could compare up to 2020. It had that in comparison to the years, but then 2021 you can't really get into it, and 2022 it had a whole different way of slicing and dicing it that was really, really hard to get into. But when I tried to go into the other layers of this was like the state statistics, it all of a sudden went into this equity stuff, and it was all about the whole the whole health authority, the state health authority is they just use that word, and that's the only thing they evaluate. Health is equity. Who's getting the is everybody getting the same thing? So it's not really about measuring the health of our state and who we are, and are we healthy or are we sick, and what do we need to do to make it better. It's not about that at all. It's about getting everybody the exact same thing, and that's all that matters anymore. And there were pages and pages of this, um, how to measure it, and all these committees and all these people. It's this giant bureaucracy that's huge, that's called equity, that was just about the statistics in the state. And it's like that in education too. If you can't address this issue in every single class and everything in all the curriculums, then you're not measuring up. So it's all about measuring everybody to this equal thing. But nature isn't like that. Nature is asymmetrical, and nature has a lot of diversity, and the diversity is what gives you the solutions for moving forward. It's all the diversity, and it's the outliers. The outliers are what, they're like people like Tesla, people that they're way ahead of their time. They're the outliers, and maybe nobody pays attention to them at first, but they're there. So that's what we need, is asymmetry and outliers to make the system of nature self-regulate and improve itself. Those things are essential, and they're being somehow removed from we're all of the bureaucracy is not reflecting those kinds of solutions, which is kind of how we came together. We came together because we wanted to solve a problem from all these different kinds of people in different places and different solutions, and that drew us together. And that's nature does that in evolution. It brings the outliers there. Anyway, I do have, and maybe later on, you can play it. I sent you an email right at the last minute, John. Did you get that with some links and stuff? But did you get my email?
You're muted. Is he talking? Can you hear
John,
him? Hi.
John, you're muted. We can't hear you, John.
Anyways, I'll just make a comment on
Sorry
that.
about that.
Oh, okay. So anyways, before you move on to the next subject, I just want to say, Carol, that I was thinking today about us coming together, and you know how there's always these silver linings that are so meant to be, and it actually turned into a term that I'll tell you guys, but I was just saying to myself, the reality of it for myself, and I think for many of us, is that if our friends and family and the people that we've always, leaned on for whatever, if we could talk to them about this stuff, we would have been way too much stuck in our comfort zone, and we never would have had the need to reach out to further, less comfortable or less stable places, because that need was so great. And so if you look at that in the whole of everybody, it's like so meant to be, you know what I mean? So it's like good to think about if you get frustrated at any moment, because it's like without that, if we just all understood it all at the same time, all at once, it wouldn't be as strong. It wouldn't be as, weaved up as like you're saying, organically, and by the way that like nature kind of, brings us together. And the other thing that I want to say about what the individual is, that opposite of what that, when they play all the news people saying the exact same thing at the same time, like we can share the same sentiments, and we can, have a conversation or whatnot, but the aggregate of the individual is something that, yeah, they're trying to control it with their manipulation and mind control and stuff. But even people that are like mind control slaves, at some point, certain things bust them out of it. You know, they break out of
Mhm.
it. So it's like, it's almost like tree roots busting through the sidewalk or
Yeah,
something.
right.
You
That's a
know, it's
good analogy.
yeah. So it's
I
like,
like
that's what
that.
we do. We're not gonna be like, you know, if it we'll pop up somewhere else. You know.
Yeah, it is a force to be reckoned with. Nature is a force, and it's a big one.
Oh, and so anyway, and so this is what I thought of. I was going to call us RIR, Robust Integral Resiliency.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to write that down because my brain forgets stuff. I love
Okay.
it.
Robust Integral Resiliency. And that's basically because just thinking that, you know, there have been times in the past before this current war, you know, all these years, is that things weren't as hard, but say personally, I got knocked down harder. And so I feel like, wow, you know, just like knock on wood, whatever, bless everybody, is that the times have gotten harder, but we've become more resilient, you know?
Hmm. And more persistent, I think. I think we've seen it enough times rearing its head, and now we have to do something. It's just too bad, too out of control.
Oh, and I'm sorry, one more thing that I thought on that thing is that, you know, sometimes I think like, oh, ignorance, if whoever said ignorance is bliss was probably trying to hide something.
Yeah.
I love that one.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. John, I sent you a couple of things in the email, and then when you replied, you
Which
were muted.
which email did you send it to?
Wilkins, I think. I replied to the one you sent out. Do I need to send it to a different one?
Okay.
Which different one should I send it to?
Because I even checked spam. I couldn't find it.
You couldn't find it? Okay, let me see if it got sent. Yeah, it did get sent, and let's see who I sent it to. Wilkins at Research Roadshow 5. Because I just replied to your Protecting the Nest one.
Research social. Okay, got it. Okay, I'll try and pull it up. Yeah, but
Yes.
while I'm pulling that up, I just want to make a comment on Tara's comment. Back in the 50s and 60s, everyone was talking about equality of opportunity. And that makes a lot of sense. Even in third world countries, every parent wants for their child that they have more opportunities than they had, or at least that certain kids don't have better opportunities and that their kids be excluded from getting those chances. You know, the perfect example is the affirmative action. Why did affirmative action come into being? Because there was effectively, due to Jim Crow laws or whatever you want to talk about, there was not a level playing field in America, especially in the South. So how did we have to explore how we went from equality of opportunity to equality of outcome. Somewhere along we've got to address that.
Well, it's not even equality of outcome. It's come to mean, I think, the lowest common denominator, which is different than equality of or equality under the law or yeah, equality of opportunity. It's different when everybody gets doled out the least amount that you can spread around to everybody. That's a limiting factor. Instead of having equality mean it's unlimiting factor and you have freedom is what you're looking at. You're looking at you just get this much and everybody gets the same and that's what's fair. But it's not what's right. So
Well,
it's a big difference.
control shows up in all these really fancy, nice forms, is what it is, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you think that you're fighting for equality, and in theory that is super important, but you don't recognize the generational seeds that are being planted,
Mhm.
like the whole idea of different sciences or different industries that have like a lot of men or a lot of probably just more muscular people, like how can you say, oh, you need to include more of this and that kind of person? It's like people gravitate to what their innate skills they have.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges of life is to find out your path and who you are and what you're good at and what feels right, what really challenges you and interests you in life, and whether it's just a academic interest or whether it's a profession, whatever it is, that's what makes us happy. And this idea of Klaus Schwab, that you will have nothing and be happy, it's not about having something, it's about being able to pursue your love, what you most love and what makes the universe whole for you. It's a different concept than just poking the dopamine button and getting flooded with I think that's the kind of happiness he's talking about. And unfortunately, that always has a horrible downside when you stop poking the button. And that's what we want to avoid.
Well, you got to put stuff into reality. It's like
Mm-hmm.
theories are awesome. That's how things that are really amazing start off as theories. You think of them, you throw them around, you get ideas from different people, and then you try to make it work. But you can't just if everything's just running in the realm of theory, you can't, there's no application. You got to say, hey, does this theory apply to such and such action in the world? And if it
Mm-hmm.
does, great, let's keep going with it. But if it doesn't, it's just an idea. There's tons of ideas, and that's interesting, but that doesn't make it like factual in the world.
Yeah, I think you need different perspectives to filter the ideas and different ways of looking at things, and that's how ideas get consolidated and moved forward. And if you only have the people that have equity in the idea, meaning um, corporations and governments and agencies that are bureaucratic. All of those things are bureaucratic. So you can't have an individual viewpoint of, is this working, different ways of evaluating it that come from the different viewpoints. You're missing all of that. So you just get, the sort of Hitlerian version of of everything. You get, whether you like it or not, you get this. And it dampens down real creativity, all the words that we were using and showing how they're, the very words that we would normally use to describe things are twisted to mean the opposite. So,
Yeah, and so what I mean is equal but different.
mm-hmm,
Equal respect
right.
when it comes to basic needs, basic respect, basic spiritual equality. But besides that, you have parents that have responsibility to take care of children. You have stronger people that take care of like more heavy duty situations. You have if you just like had a ship and you just loaded it with captains, it's like, what do you think is going to happen? You know what I mean? You need to be like, you can have a captain's you can have a captain's meetup, but you're not driving the same ship. It just doesn't make any sense.
So are you saying that's what the
Even in an
WEF is?
airplane,
Ship full of captains.
But they're
even in
elite
an
slaves.
airplane, you
Not
don't
let's
have
not
two
forget.
co-captains.
Okay, so like roles are they're important, they're supposed to be honored, not looked at as some kind of mask for darkness or something.
Yeah, I think. Well, that lecture that I heard by the the two transhumanists was very interesting, because the one that was the biologist was really describing how biology is self-organizing, and that's how you get creativity to solve the problems, and can solve them way outside the parameters because of that. And yet the other guy, who was the software engineer, was saying, well, if this is the case, if this is really how problems are solved creatively, why are we imposing this top-down structure? I mean, he was actually asking that question. And so I'm glad transhumanists are asking these questions. But
Yeah, because
are
it
they?
doesn't make any sense for foundation. How are you supposed to start with? It was like the Phantom Toll Booth or something. This little kid's book where like it was really funky, where the person would start off at the height they were going to be and then grow down to the ground.
Yeah, there we go. But yeah, or it's kind of opposite, in that if you have the programmer programming the AI, it's can only ever be as good as the programmer imagines it to be. And so you're missing out on all that collective creativity and problem solving, um, that can happen organically, but doesn't happen in the realm of yes or no. And the digital realm isn't as creative as the fractal realm of analog, which is what we are. We're analog, but we're analog that has infinity, the depths of infinity, and the machine learning can't have that kind of depth of infinity. It is, um, duality in the pluses or minuses. It's either yes or no. It isn't maybe, or perhaps not, or maybe there's a whole different solution. It's or both, and or neither nor. All those other permutations, which can be analog ones, aren't part of the zero or the plus.
Right. So it's like a quantum thing.
um, Well, it's kind of different than a quantum thing. I think one thing that I love about quantum mechanics, I know some people say there is no quantum reality, but one of the fundamental things about quantum reality is non-location, that you can be connected at great distances, totally connected, and it doesn't have to do with the speed of light communication. It's that, you know, you feel it, some of that intuition, I think, that we have when something happens to somebody far away that we're connected with love. We know, what happens. And that's non-location. It's this field of infinity that we're plugged into as human beings, as living human beings. I think that's a big danger, and that's the advantage. But the danger is to take a human being, which is what transhumanism, and use biology to turn them into something that can be totally controlled like a robot. Is reversing, like you were talking about. It's growing down instead of growing up. Well,
It's too limiting. You have
yeah.
to think like, planes were crafted after birds, okay?
Mhm.
But these planes don't grow back their own parts if they, get a little damaged. So you have
Right.
to think this is it's a limited version of the divine.
Mm-hmm. But we don't want to just teach our biology how to grow a new hand. We want to teach our biology the whole idea of spiritual evolution, and how do we get better at understanding each other and solving problems, and really, having, having a community and a collective basis that can embrace all of that at once. That's having that infinite, divine ability, or connection. Yeah, that's what the transhumanists are missing. It's a sad
Carol,
loss
do
to
you want me to
humanity.
play the piece on sacred geometry?
Yeah, let's look at that. Since we don't have Amber, this is about 12 minutes, and it's really beautiful. You can kind of, it has a little slow start. You could either start it at about half a minute in, or at minute 4 if you only want 8 minutes. But it's a
Minute 4?
beautiful. But yeah, or you could just start it kind of early on. It's really, he's an artist, this guy, and he uses sacred geometry, and he's Asian, and he connects it. He connects all the different realms, and so it's just it's beautiful. But you could start it before minute 4 if you want, so we have a little time.
I know it is really good to timestamp things. You know, even when you're sending it to someone, I think it's such a big help.
Yeah.
I don't always do it, but you know, if you can, sometimes the whole thing's important. So, but especially
Tell
with
me if
footage.
you can hear it.
Okay. No, can't hear anything. Not yet. Not yet. We will get this right. Technical learning.
It doesn't have very much of a soundtrack. So
Oh, okay. Are we supposed to be reading it? Oh.
It's just some really beautiful music that's
Oh,
very
okay.
fair. So we can kind of make comments, I think, on top of it if that works. But
Okay.
if not, we can just, it's visually quite delightful. Is it playing? I don't see that it is.
I don't think so. Nothing's moving.
Yeah, it says it.
Wait,
says
is
it's
John not moving? I don't know if.
Yeah,
Oh,
John's
okay. I don't know if
moving.
he was moving either. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's technical learning on the job. I know, that's good. But you know what? There's one thing that I was thinking about when you were talking earlier was today I'm going to be lame with names. I don't have a lot of notes in front of me, but I don't even know what the name of this is anyway. But so I remember when my son was little and my mom was like reading to him. I think it was a school summer reading book or something. And usually as I was going through life, you just, that's what we do. We categorize things or whatever. So whatever she was reading to him, I was like, this sounds like odd. It doesn't sound right or something. And it sounded like it was something of like this AI brain, right? A unibrain type thing. And it didn't fit with the just the organic world that I categorize things through, So I didn't really give it that much thought. I forgot even the name of it, but I'm pretty sure they made it into a movie semi recently, not super recently, and like Oprah was the AI brain person or something. Now, I never delved into the whole story myself, and I don't know if anybody knows what I'm talking about, but I think it does relate to, this whole thing you're describing on the AI hive mind brain.
Yeah, and getting that language. What did they call it? It was really interesting name. I think it was called intellectual camouflage.
Seriously, that's very telling, intellectual camouflage. So they're basically saying that we want to subversively weave ourselves into whatever so you can't see us and we can be active while camouflaged.
Yeah, and teach you these transhumanist ideas are okay without you knowing. Without you knowing, that's where you're going. I think it's probably known that people that understand where they're going don't want it. We can see it. We're saying,
and that's why,
let's look at this. Yikes, yikes, alarm, alarm. Send up the alarm.
and that's one of the things that I think really ties into the generational tricks and seeds of tricks, is because it's like layered in there, and there's so much like important symbolism and banner events in each generation that is so important to them as they come up together, like things that just hold so much meaning, to the
Mm-hmm.
very point that even once you find out that there's darkness around, you still don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. You want to weave out, these pieces actually I'll take with me, because that's what evil always does. It
You can learn
always
from that. Yeah.
yeah, it can only infiltrate. And so that's why when you're saying like creative destruction, it's like, how can you have creative destruction? That's an oxymoron. Okay, if you want to
Well,
destroy something.
but Tara, I think there is creative destruction everywhere you look, and you have to also see that the fall is into the winter. Things change and they are rebuilt, and that those cycles, that there is reality and truth to that idea, but it doesn't mean break down society and take out all the police and everything you've ever known, and all your food goes away.
That's
It's
not creative.
using
That's just destruction.
yeah, that's just a destruction. And then coming back from fentanyl addiction, that's really difficult. I mean, things are breaking down in a way that they don't have to break down. You can have the little bits of creative destruction, the fall and the winter and the natural things that happen, and evolution doesn't have to happen all in a couple of years. Look what's happened in a couple of years. It's
Well, you say those are the
Okay,
things
can we?
that,
Do you
if
want to
you,
go?
oh, you
yeah,
ready?
okay. Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
Do you want to go ahead and play the video?
Yeah. Yeah, let's watch this because it's got some real great concepts in it.
There's no sound.
It's not really playing.
5-0. 5-0.
No
Yeah,
sound.
no sound.
No sound.
Okay.
Well, I'll just say this one thing. So, if you came onto, a big piece of land, big piece of rock, and you're gonna come and break apart some of this rock to do stuff. It's like, what are you gonna look for? What are you gonna start off with? Fault lines. Okay, so there's natural fault lines. Winter time, whatever, anything that they can find as a little or a big fault line, they're going to drive their stake or whatever, and they're going to start right there and knock it down and try to make the fault lines bigger. So our
But the
job,
reality is that the little teeny diatoms were what came to break down the earth, and they did it by making, calcium. Their shells created this other, thing. Then all the dead bodies makes limestone, and life itself is what changed the inanimate to become useful to the animate. So it all of a sudden we start having, the once the life gets out onto the rock and the lichens break it down and the trees come and all this stuff happens, and it's just all this, it's meaningful what's happening, and we're actually creating. A lot of the elements came from life. They weren't the original rocks. Are these really stable crystal structures, and life started getting in there, and the tiny things, and breaking it down and changing things and moving things and evolving things, and the life on the planet actually increased the biosphere. It made it more. It made it interesting, and people started thinking, and then there's this whole electrical field around it all too that we are all contributing to. Our ideas are part of that. So yeah, there's a lot to break down
and
the rocks that we can do organically that keep moving forward.
there
Okay, let's
is,
try one more time.
okay,
Okay.
let's try it. I see the golden ratio,
Yeah,
which
sacred
is the
geometry.
divine.
is embedded in your DNA, is what it says. So here we go. We still don't have any sound. It's kind of jumping forward.
I think that this is a hurdle that we will get through with the sound. You know, it takes time. It's an organic process, you know. But those things that you're describing are literally why those of us that do want to be creative with that natural stuff kind of fills in the fault lines. You know, we don't want big gaping fault lines. We want we want to be the glue that connects things that don't need to be separated because they have a good action when they have a connection, you know. So that's and speaking of DNA, you know, and one of the very fights that we're in right now literally takes place in our RNA, which heals up DNA, you know. So where is this fight, you know? I mean, it's kind of on all fronts, but if you think about it like that, it's like literally like they've brought the war straight to our DNA.
Yeah, and it is getting into lots of medicine. I just noticed we've got some skin reactions going on, and the medicine that got prescribed is RNA medicine. It's just a cream. But my grandson had a really bad reaction to it. It made it worse. It didn't get better, it made it worse.
Wait, what? For his injury?
Well, he had a skin infection. He had a foot problem, but that came later. He had the big plastic things that, what are they? The armor they wear, the football guys wear this armor that's made out of plastic, and it rubbed, and that got infected. And he got prescribed a cream that's an RNA cream, and that made it spread everywhere. So it just grew and grew, and it looked like all those horrible pictures of smallpox. It was awful. And the you know, what was, I thought, antibacterial ointment, but it's really RNA stuff. It had a horrible allergic reaction to it. So
how tricky.
Yeah, so we used clay and CBD oil, and it started to get better, and now it's much better. It's just a few little scabs. It's finally getting better, just in time for the homecoming dance tonight. He's looking like a regular person, even though he's wearing a boot, because he did wreck his ankle too. That was separate and later. Yeah.
Well, I'll just say a simple thing that I do. I always have with me one spray bottle of hydrogen peroxide and one spray bottle of rubbing alcohol. So with that, you know, with him and his suits and stuff, I would just say anything starts rubbing, spray on the hydrogen peroxide. And also,
it had to do with that it was an open wound that didn't
get and especially cover it. Don't let it keep rubbing. And also clean the stuff with if you need a quick clean and something gets dirty, with the rubbing alcohol. So basically rubbing alcohol for surfaces, hydrogen peroxide for skins.
Yeah, hydrogen peroxide is great stuff. It's not good for new skin though. If you lose a bunch of skin, it can really hurt it. And then I think the oil really helped, because it was made with coconut or olive, I can't remember, oil, really good oil, and then just from, you know, brand fresh leaves. So is it just not going to play, John? No sound? Is that where we are?
No, I have a problem running StreamYard and YouTube at the same time. So next time what we're going to do is I'm going to record. I'm gonna rip the video beforehand and then play it on Windows Media Player or some other tool.
Okay. Well, you could show that. The other one is just a link to a graph of the difference, going back to kind of the kids getting the shot. Shows some of the untruths or the twisting of the truth of the statistics really, really clearly on that other link. Did you have something, Tara, you wanted to play last?
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can get it here.
So, or is it on something else?
I just recorded it onto my tablet here. So let me see what I can do here. I'm just a little blind. Sorry about that. So have you guys heard of Edward
G? You can put it in the private chat.
Yeah, now
I'm not that technical. I'm old
Okay.
school, pen and paper.
Scroll down to the
Oh, I see.
graph. Scroll the article down, John, to the bottom of the. So here we go. Okay, I'll read what this says. Yeah, scroll up one more line. I mean, go back a little bit, and I'll read that, and then you can go down. But yeah, this is a comparison of the fatalities. The CDC changed the coding of the death certificates for COVID in March of 2020, prior to the pandemic. The coding changes falsely elevate COVID as the cause of death by a factor of 17 times. So what they did was the things that were all COVID deaths that we're looking at this great big number, up until March of 2020, they wouldn't have been able to be on death certificates. The long-standing peer-reviewed system of data collection and reporting that was established in 2003 was thrown out the window, so they could call anything on the PCR test. If anybody had a PCR test and there was one tiny molecule of SARS-CoV-2 in there, then it was called a COVID death. And that's what these numbers, and scroll up a little to show the actual difference. There was 161,392 fatalities using the new CDC guidelines in testing this. But if they'd used the old fatalities, the way they gauged them, it would only have been 9,000 for the whole time, all the way going back to 2020. That's how many deaths of actually from COVID would have happened. And this wouldn't have been called an epidemic. It wouldn't have, all these things that were triggered, that were long planned, wouldn't have happened, and we wouldn't be giving all the little children these horrible shots. So this is trickery. And you can scroll up a little bit more. There's one other kind of important comment I wanted to read about this. So just, can you scroll up like one more paragraph? Yeah, it says, what happened to it? I don't know. I just want to read the paragraph. Oh, okay. So the person that looked at this is called Dr. Ioannidis. Noted years ago that distinctions are not being made between dying with COVID and dying of COVID. And we talked about this a lot when we were looking at all this, but this is, the actual statistical numbers. Additionally, there's financial incentives for the hospitals to list COVID as the cause of death. The CARES Act gave a 20% premium. And we heard about, all the kickbacks and stuff. So anyway, this was really back at the earlier part of the discussion of how we got to approving this for little kids. It's just such trickery. The whole thing is such trickery how we got there, and using the word deaths. It doesn't, we're not attributing it to what it really actually was, which was lots of comorbidities. Anyway, just a little rant about what happened this morning with the CDC vote.
No, this is so important. And did I don't know if you guys caught, I don't remember his last name, but I'm just going to call him John B, because I believe his last name would start with a B. That Mark on Housatonic.
Yes, that was incredibly amazing.
And he did these graphs out of just taking it small scale, just Massachusetts, and going into these, applying the kind of death certificates with actual case studies and kind of overlapping them. And he has some graphs that are very telling. And I took screenshots of, all his graphs, and it's something that, and then you multiply that from all the areas.
Fraud. It's just total out and out fraud. But the other thing, John Bedouin, I'm not sure how I pronounce his name, but he made an offer. He said that he would do this analysis in any state that would give him access to the information. And so I emailed Mark and asked for his email, because I went to his website and there wasn't a way to contact him on that. But I would like to take him up on that, because we have no access anymore to the death certificates or even the analysis or anything. They've just, a year ago you could still get into the numbers and you could at least copy them down and get some kind of idea. But
Yeah,
now,
because they thought they had 75 years to wait to show stuff.
yeah, right. And then a lot of it came out with the Pfizer stuff that had to come out. But anyway, I'd love him to do the analysis of my state and anyone else. You could do it for Georgia, John, or Ohio, where you're from, or you could do it for Massachusetts. Or, well, he was in Massachusetts, so that's already been done.
And I just have to say, from being over here, everything that he says, I mean, I don't know everyone's personal life, but for me, my family, people I know, extended communities, those numbers were smack right on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we really need to start holding the math accountable to the agencies that are supposed to be giving us real numbers. And, if we're going to have this new world order run by agency people and this giant bureaucracy, they better get it right or get out of there.
So, and did you guys hear, or do you have the understanding that all this was something that they were going to play out and pave out over like a longer boiling the frog for a slower amount of time type thing with Hillary and blah, blah, blah?
Well, the planning shows that, all of the, after COVID comes monkeypox and Ebola and the cancer shot to the moon, because all this stuff is going to give people fast acting cancer. Ultimately, it's kind of a HIV type AIDS thing. It hurts your immune system. Our immune systems aren't used to all the stuff that is actually in the shots, which we finally found out. Yeah, there he is. So he made that offer. So anybody paying attention to this broadcast from a different state, from Massachusetts, I'm not quite sure how to contact him. I can't tell you, but I'm trying to find out through Mark. And I would like to find out what kind of people can get a hold of those statistics. I think you might have to be a doctor, or maybe you have to work for the state. I don't know who it is you need to look for, but this is something everybody can do, to protect their own nest. Get out there and get the real numbers, and the paper's not going to put them out, but you can start passing them around to your friends and neighbors.
Yeah, and there's another who, do you know the name of the doctor who's the Florida, what's his position? The Secretary of Health or something? Do you know what I'm talking about?
In Florida. I'm not sure who you're talking about.
I might be saying the position wrong, but on X22 report a few days ago, he just did a I don't have the name in front of me, but he just did an interview of him, and he has a position in Florida where he is saying no, they stop giving it to people, or stop giving it to people in this age bracket or this thing. He sounded like he was like, I didn't watch the whole thing, but he's someone that I'm definitely bringing.
Yeah. Well, finally, at least one state is standing up, and I think others are too. I think there's others that there are investigations, and the petitions to the Supreme Court. So things are definitely happening, but we just can't let it up until it all is exposed as the fraud that it is. It's just downright fraud from there's so much corruption. All it is the same as a mafia doing all this, and they're calling themselves, people that we should be able to respect, but we can't. They're liars.
Well, that's part of the buildup, is that, keep everybody busy, living paycheck to paycheck, scrambling to, take care of the things that are on their table for that day. And meanwhile, this is easy. sort of easy to understand. Meanwhile, psychopaths have taken up powers of control. And in the meantime, in the past they've done it. So they have these farmed people ready to plug them in. And so our good people, the main mistake is we weren't paying attention to who these people they're plugging in, putting way too much faith into that, people that we can trust are taking care of that. Oh, people we can trust are taking care of that. Really? Like, who are they? This is what we need to enter each agreement with from now on.
Yeah, obviously we can't trust the CDC, we can't trust the FDA, we can't trust the NIH. So it's all the agencies have become so corrupt. John, did you say
another
something?
good point?
And it's it's not just like we can't trust them. Yeah, we can't trust them, but it's like literally these people or people working through them by proxy are putting war onto us. They're putting war onto us, to our bodies, our minds, our spirits, our families, our network. Even you don't even notice.
Good. Said that.
You're getting a little choppy.
Well, I think that there's no accountability anymore, and you can't even get through to them to ask the question. And I think you're right about we weren't minding we got lazy. And so we have to take that accountability and step up and do it and pass that on to everybody who wakes up. So it is about accountability, and we have to hold their feet to the fire. These statistics are wrong. Look at them. Here they are. They're wrong because they won't answer the questions. It's like this didn't, we're just going to ignore it and it'll go away. You just keep saying the lie over and over until that's all that exists.
And they actively remove data. If something comes up, oh, they notice this. Oh, overnight, the VIIRS records change, or they remove this and that. That's why someone like John Bourdain, he said that he has databases that he uses. I don't know how
he had the whole story meticulously tracked. When that happened, what that happened, lots of examples. He was just amazing. That was a great show. I agree.
I know, it really was. So anybody that hasn't seen that, go to Housatonic Live and you can catch John Bourdain. Not Bourdain,
but it was
Bowden.
This starts with a B.
However you say it, it was great.
Yeah. But there's other countries waking up that are saying no more shots to kids, no more shots to anybody under 40. They're starting to wake up when they do see those statistics. So there are ethical people still out there in the world that are making a difference. And we just all have to keep it up until it dissolves. The criminals dissolve into their own criminality and it all collapses on top of them, because that it is criminality. It's total trickery. It's total pirating. It's stealing all of our taxes to do this to ourselves. That it's all paid by the government, and that's the problem, that they had to do all those reports, all the NIH reports, all the National Science Foundation reports. So there's tracks in the sand, but they're quickly people have less access to all that stuff. We had it at the beginning. We could get that stuff in, 10 minutes at that very first charrette we went to, Tara. It was all there, and now it's all hidden. So
but there's been people collecting, the right people collecting it all along the way. So they think they can, just delete some, and I'm sure, some does go away permanently, but the basic formula that they use, we have record.
Yeah.
There's a permanent record.
And mostly it's just the links are broken and the record's still there. If you can get the exact title of something or get enough details, then it's still searchable and you can come up with it, because it's just the top level links that have been broken to start with. So it's this, it's our ingenuity and creativity that will get there, and persistence, and our heart to make it happen. So we've got what it takes as human beings. So we just have to activate it.
That's true. And if you take it to just the organic life that we see around us all the time, when we look at the good stuff, the stuff that's growing well, whatever tree you look at, you have to think of the layers, and you have to think, okay, there is a layer of roots, and the layer of roots are doing things that you can't see. And so that's kind of where you if you are the tree, or you become the tree, or you're just looking at the tree imagining yourself to be with the tree, you have the roots that you cannot see, but you reach up to the heavens, so
Mhm.
and then in the middle you have actual stuff that you can see going on. So we need to really move when we think we should move, be activated, but also have faith that there are things going on underground that you can't
Mhm.
see. You can feel them,
And
and
they're creepy.
if you quiet your
Mhm.
mind, that gives you a lot of security, because that's what roots do.
Well, the scary thing, Tara, is that like in my neighborhood, with all the weird fires and etc., and weird weather, we have a lot of trees. I live in an inner city forest, and a couple of those trees yesterday, just right at my neighbor's parking meridian, or whatever you call it, just tipped over. And I looked at them, and the roots were gone. It was just like a mushroom underneath the tree, and there was no roots, and that's why the tree just tipped over in a little wind. So that's what we can't let happen. We have to keep our roots strong, and all that life under the soil is super important. So that's our community, and that's our reaching out and getting what it is we need to solve problems, just in time. That's
Well,
what we
Carol,
have to
one
do.
thing that I wanted to add onto your comment about Mark's video with John Bourdain was and I meant to bring this up last night, the need for citizen experts in statistics and probability,
Mhm.
because you have to go out into your own neighborhood, your own community, gather your own data, and then
Mhm.
test it, and use the help of an expert in probability and statistics to formulate a hypothesis, and then to adequately test that hypothesis to different confidence levels. And
Mhm.
that is the kind of report that we need. These citizens reports, professional quality reports that we need to give the decision makers at the CDC, or the Atlanta mayor's office, that we need to get those reports out.
Well, he had a great background for that. And it's a lot like George's. He was like a high tech salesman guy. And so he's used to making reports and gathering statistics and making presentations. And then he studied law on top of that. And he already knew quite a bit about medical stuff. So he really had what it took to put together a great presentation and present it as well. So he was number one. That was really, really great. So, but his offer is he'll do that if we can get out there and get our state the right people that he needs to get the access, he'll do it. So that is an incredible offer, and let's take him up on it.
But
I
while
think
you're
so.
waiting
I
for him
mean,
to come to your state,
Yeah. Well, he doesn't have to come. I mean, all he needs is access to the death certificates, and he said he's willing to sign an NDA or whatever, so people's names are all removed. And but you have to get the right people who are willing to do that. And with all this equity and all this stuff going on, these are the young global leaders that have been trained, and they're replacing the real roots with something else. So we have to find the right people that still have access to that, who are willing to give permission.
That's funny too, because, just in my kooky way of interpreting things, I was thinking the other day, I was like, okay, so we want to have our antennas, and I love antennas, and I love ants. So I just imagine the ants crawling up to the tippity top, and then we have to have heart tennas, because we have to have understanding, and then we have to have root tennas, because that's, the other side of it. That's our stability. That's our base. That's our foundation.
Yeah.
That's our, and it's also our connectivity to the inner world and life.
Yeah, I saw a really cool show the other day about antennas, and it was about how our hair is antennas, and it was by one of Dason's amazing connections. The guy's name is Buddy James, and he's a cartographer, and he does all these incredible maps of energy and how it all connects. And so it was just a discussion about how hairs have that formation of, every amazing antenna, and of Birkeland currents, which is what probably our consciousness works through. Birkeland currents, and it's how the universe makes itself. It's just pretty amazing. So it's just fractal. Yeah. Everything
like
is on
goosebumps.
a big scale, it's on a teeny scale,
Goosebumps.
and our hairs are made out of that too. They're all these layers of a tube that has light going through it. And there was on YouTube or something years ago, I saw this, and I've never been able to find it again, but it was an electron microscope looking at the base of a live hair. And the live hair, it was just like a rainbow of colors moving back and forth, and you could see the root of the hair actually, like, pulsing. So it definitely is an antenna. Your hair is an antenna, and that's why all the holy people all over the world don't cut their hair. It's part of us. It's an important part of us.
Yeah, like the Navajo tradition is that it won't rain unless they have the long hair in order to, accept the rain. And, the only spot on our bodies that don't have hair are our eyelids and the palms of our hands and the palms of our feet. And everywhere else has hair. And, goosebumps that we get when we feel something.
The hair stands up.
Hair stands up. And Carol, have you heard of the vril? Sorry, the chickens want in on this conversation. They have a lot to say. Have you heard of the Vril Society?
Well, my understanding of what vril is, it's the energy that is like chi and prana, and it's a Sanskrit word that comes from the Vedas, but that Hitler and the Nazis took that, and they were trying to figure out what it is and how to use it. And that's kind of the vestiges of what we're dealing with now, is people trying to understand what that energy is and not understanding it and messing it all up and trying to make it into this top-down control, which is the opposite. It's like we are curious. We're out there to be a sensor to the all and to say, this is what's going on. We're the scouts. We're reporting back to in the infinite wisdom what's out there, and the infinite wisdom reports back and incorporates that. And it is an amazing intelligence wisdom system is what it is. But if you use that energy for something nefarious, then it's not going to work right. It's going to blow up eventually.
Yeah, it's back to how evil doesn't create. It infiltrates. Yeah. It always infiltrates. So you have a base thing that probably is pretty good, and they come and whatever comes in and makes a synthetic version and something else. So that's why it really takes a non-black and white viewpoint to figure it out.
Yeah, it's the both and, not either or. And that's what we need to do in our communities, is to bring that back to both. Oh, here's Buddy James in the Geometry of the Universe. Yeah, we've played some of his. He has beautiful, beautiful videos that we've played before too. Because he's come up with this Doherty set that really, it's a fractal energetic. Um, it looks kind of like DNA, but it goes small and big, and it from the infinitely small to the infinitely big, and everything's tapped into that. And he's worked out the mathematics of what he calls this Doherty set, and that's what is in Berkeley currents, which are the energy that connects everything to everything. It's beautiful once you get into it. It's just so visually amazing at those tiny scales or the big scales. It fits in with the what the Webb telescope. What's his first name? It's not George.
Um,
The
you mean
something
from the?
Webb
I'm not
Webb
sure.
telescope. What they're finding, this incredible imagery out in outer space, is what's happening within us and within the soil and within everywhere you look. So it is amazing.
And
We're
that's one of the reasons why, putting your feet on or any part of you on the ground literally is like plugging in, like the way that you
Mhm.
plug in your electronic device to get charged.
Yeah,
Like
recharge.
that's how we plug into the earth. That's why I love moccasins. It's because then you
Mhm.
can not hurt your feet and still be good connected running around. And some of them have soles, and some of them are just the skins. And you have socks or just bare feet, and anything that you can get, just plugging yourself in somehow so you can get that recharge that I think is something innate that has been hidden, and we
Mhm.
understand a little bit of, and we have people like Tesla that understand it in great ways. And so that's something that we can look forward to, as far as more understanding of that and more simple access to ideas like that.
Well, I think moccasins are a great way to do it, and being barefoot is a great way. And unfortunately, I think most of the soles, we used to have leather soles, and that didn't break that connection, but the plastic soles do. They're insulators, so that connection is broken just from the shoes that we typically wear, unfortunately. And that's probably how one of the things that we became more susceptible to not being connected, and this trickery of language. And it's we're not feeling as much from our heart in general as a population as traditionally has happened up until the age of the plastic soles.
Yeah, like that's what they meant by rubber soul, right? John Lennon, something.
Yeah,
Beatles.
yeah, rubber is an insulator.
Even though we know rubber is natural because of rubber tree, so we're not knocking it
Mhm.
as a fabric or anything, but sometimes you just need to make that connection. It's funny too, because it's like when I was a kid, young adult, I used to wear a lot of jewelry, a lot of like rings and stuff, and like necklace and different stuff. And at some point I was like, had the realization that I'm like, this is like physically bonding me. Like I feel
Mhm.
bonded up. You know what I mean? Like I was like, I don't have like a free energy towards everywhere that I have this certain jewelry on. And so I, stopped wearing so much of it, and I kind of stuck with earrings because that's easy. Your ears are kind of sticking out as antennas
Mhm.
anyway, put a
Mhm.
little dangle.
Dangle.
But
Yeah.
I never was able to really go back to necklaces because that's just such a like protected area. But you don't think of these things, and you just kind of like put it how energy does move through the materials that we are and that we hang out with.
Well, jewelry, especially like crystals that have grown, they've always had, I think people have recognized them as power. But I've learned recently that, these really solid elements, like would be those kinds of crystals, they're symmetrical. But we're a liquid crystal, and that's asymmetry. It's asymmetrical, and that there is, to our growth patterns, there's a handedness and a spiral that it's not bilaterally just exactly. We look bilaterally symmetrical, but inside we don't. Our organs are on different sides. We're not. We're asymmetrical, and that makes us more. We're elements of life. It's dynamic. It's living. It's different than inanimate.
So, but if you go back to the tree analogy, then it seems asymmetrical because we only see one side of it. But if you look at kind of the root system with it, it still is asymmetrical because they're different roles. But they, asymmetrical doesn't have to mean unbalanced.
No,
Even if
beautiful.
because
It's torus.
yeah,
It's a torus shape, but it's asymmetrical at the same time. Yeah, and that's
it makes it outside of that digital computerized thing, because art and shadow, the way that it plays on each other, it takes an asymmetrical situation and forms symmetry with it through balance.
Yeah. And by this winding and unwinding pattern, which is intrinsic to the whole entire universe and solar system and all of that. It's got these currents going through them. Yeah, and that makes that asymmetry happen. It's spiraling down and spiraling up.
Yep. And the when we talk about the golden mean, which is divinity, and it's so divine that you can't even track it. And if you put the Fibonacci sequence, which is the 314, isn't it? Or is it the infinity? But anyways,
it's like 1 plus 1 is 2,
right.
2 plus 3 and 5
like
is
musical
5,
scale.
5 plus 3 is 8. Yeah, it's moving, but it's not. It's more asymmetrical than just the golden mean. Yeah.
So it gives us the ability to track the divine, which is untrackable. If that makes any sense.
Exactly. That's how I think that's right. I call it infinity, but yeah, it goes from the tiny to the bigger than you can imagine.
And this is these ideas and understandings are something that really can be a healing factor for loneliness. Oh, look at a ladybug just landed on my nose.
Oh, that's great.
So if you feel lonely, just call out to nature. Your little sprite guy will come right to you. But it's just that feeling that like we are.
Oh, she's going up.
We are individuals, but we're so connected to everything else that, and we are, that it's almost like if a person in a city that's not connected to the ground or is not getting enough sunlight or something, or something's going on where they're feeling lonely, it's like the same thing as plugging in is just right where you are. Is that it's like I almost pictured when you were talking about it, like someone's angels like holding them like all around, instead of realizing that like this, what we're up against is not just an empty space. It's like something that we're really collectively part of. So you can, as an individual, feel really empowered to be like, I'm going to see this from my own perspective and but other times you're like, I don't know, I just got to give it up to everything that I'm connected to and just flow with it, because it's like our flowing is not just limited to what we can see.
And I think everybody who of the researchers, we're all considered researchers because it's guided, it's not. And Harry says this very clearly, what is his term? He said, I'm not the researcher, God is the researcher. It's like it comes through him. It's a current that he's feeling as to where he's looking. And I felt that many times too. It's just like stuff, you're looking for something and it just opens up and there it is, it appears. And that's kind of finding that path that we need to know, so there it is. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, that's what gives that. That's what's like, you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing. You're on the right path. Keep going.
Like Deborah's Deborah's our audience today, I think, and she said a couple of wonderful things. One, yeah, she's talking about how do you say his name? Blavatsky? Blavatsky?
Blavatsky.
Yeah, anyway, she's talking about him, talking about Vril, but also the CDC. She said the CDC was, okay, I'll read this. Born into aristocracy, traveled widely around the empire as a child, largely self-educated. Oh, Madame Blavatsky. Okay, now I know who you were saying. I thought you were talking about someone else. Developed an interest in Western esotericism during her years in 1849 Europe, the Americas, and India. I think there's so much in the Vedas. I mean, I just love the Vedas, and they're 10,000 years old at least. So it's probably one of the oldest records we have, and it's what has informed things like string theory. So I think Blavatsky was definitely influenced by India and the Vedas for sure. Hi, Charles. Charles is out there too. But the
Hi,
other
Charles. Hey, Deborah. I read Madame Blavatsky, and before I knew any of this darker stuff, and I really liked her. I found her to be she didn't seem to be like satanic or anything like that, even though I didn't really have a reference for that totally when I read it. But she really had access to ancient writings and Sanskrit and different really aggregate of interesting historical things and she had a great mind. And I just, and the other thing is that, I say these generational tricks, and I think that, in my generation, it was an anti-man and anti-Christian sentiment being seeded. And she was kind of the first thing that I read that actually incorporated biblical ideas into her spiritual viewpoints. And up until that time, I'm from an area that's very secular, and up until that time, I went to like Catholic school and stuff like that, but up until that time, there was such an anti-Christian sentiment. Like, I didn't even notice it. It was like anything Christian would be like, oh, a Christian map, oh, of course that's fake. Or like, oh, a Christian this, oh, no, that just cancels it out. You know what I mean? So she was actually the first one that was like, okay, Genesis and just these ideas of metaphysics and spirituality.
Well, I think it's very connected, Christianity to the Vedas in a way. If you read, like, one of the Vedas is the Mahabharata, and it's a story of a family wandering for 40 years. They lost their kingdom due to trickery, actually, and they made a bad bet that somebody had kind of twisted, and they honored their bet. We will leave. And then they wandered for 40 years, and all these things happened. And many of those stories of the wandering are in the Old Testament and the New Testament, and the teachings of Christianity. There's definitely a connection between that, and there's also a connection, I think, to science, because before it gets into that, there is, the Genesis story is part of the Mahabharata too. And that lays out this beautiful concentric mathematics that you see in sacred geometry. And, you see that. And it's the basis of connecting the tiny to the big, I believe. So, yeah, it's all there. It's all part of the continuum. The stories get translated with different points of view, different languages, different time frames, but they're kind of the same stories. And they teach you ethics. It teaches you how to find your path and what matters, and, how to have compassion, and all these things it's the same teachings. It's just done a little differently. So it's all good. And then the story, the battle, and the big battle, which is the Bhagavad Gita story of Arjuna. He's a warrior, and he has Krishna, who is his charioteer. This is a big battle, and he has to fight his own family in the battle. And he doesn't want to. He loves them, and that's kind of where we are now, and Krishna, the charioteer, is saying, well, you're a warrior and you have to do your job. Your job is to be a warrior, and this you have to go forward here. And so the battle is this giant battle, but they do return their kingdom. So it's the same. It's all these stories have been told in different ways, many different ways. All the main religions, they all have some connection. So
And that sounds like
go
the
ahead.
need to be innovative, because if you're only given these choices and you're like, no, none of those choices work, that gives you opportunity to say, let's think outside the box here.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what we have.
One of the problems is that people simply aren't thinking right now. They're not. We're so bogged down with the day to day and running around, getting the grocery shopping done, and then no one has the time to sit down and really have a good talk with their neighbor. I remember growing up, my parents would often go across the street and spend 2 or 3 or 4 hours talking to their neighbors. And that rarely happens anymore. And they talked about things that mattered. And today we don't. But going back to Carol's to Carol's explanation of the fractal nature, I love that. I love the idea when Carol brought it up a couple of weeks ago, that a woman gives birth to a daughter, and the daughter gives birth to her daughter. The fractal nature of that is just fantastic.
Yeah, it's the
But
spiral cord, the
the
umbilical cord connects everybody.
yeah, we have to figure out the real knowledge, authentic knowledge that was transmitted from generation to generation to generation is being lost, and most of what they teach in universities is worthless now. We have to get back to what is authentic knowledge, because that ties the metaphysical to the chemistry and biology and the what they call the hard sciences.
Exactly. And I think our hard sciences have been a little hijacked for sure. And, some of, like electricity was hijacked by Edison from Tesla. They both lived at the same time. And that there is a big tradition from Tesla that goes back many years. So it's not like he came up with it even, but there is a deeper knowledge, a place where we went wrong. And I think Vernadsky is another one where he got marginalized, and he's a biologist, chemist, um, a geologist too, and he ties life all together. And those scientists that were marginalized are why we're so far off now, where they weren't taught. And that was the real authentic knowledge that connected chemistry and biology and physics to life. And now it's like, surprise, surprise, life is getting hijacked all of a sudden. It's been separated, and things that are obvious are said, well, that's not part of the standard model. Well, it's the standard model that's off. That's the problem.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of scientists in the West that think that we can have life if we merge the bits and the atoms. So that if we're in something, if all our brains are connected to a big computer, we can still have a life. But that's not life for me. Excuse me. And I'm going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that my grandkids and their grandkids have a real, authentic life.
And autonomy. That's what life is. It's our autonomy to discover what it is we have to discover, and to evolve our consciousness from that process. That's what's missing. That science used to be called spiritual evolution. The science of spiritual evolution is what the Vedas are called. And it's all based on science and observation of nature. And that's what Buddha did. He sat under the tree, he observed nature, and he observed himself, and he realized something that wasn't obvious. And so it's all there, it's all right here in front of us. We just have to get back there, and we are. It's
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's why freedom creates true passion, because when you have freedom, and that includes not having the freedom of not having to struggle, okay? Because as we talk about these things, we recognize that, and we've known and we've talked about all along, that they have to work awfully hard to suppress our natural autonomy, freedom, evolution, natural arranging. Like they work, they pour. Like, how much money do they pour into it? I know that that's a bad example because there's so much freaky stuff people does with money, but
trillions
yeah, it's
and
just like
trillions and trillions.
just and still what percentage of effectiveness that they are, because I mean, after all, everything that they have pulled the wool over people's eyes, just because people are tricked, that doesn't mean the trick is true, so
No,
where's the
because look at little
foundation?
babies. You can learn a lot from little babies, and they love to share. The first thing they try to do is feed their parents, put it in their mouth. They want to share. They want to have joy and incorporate everybody and be part of things. That's just so natural. So contributing, wanting to fix things, even though they're just way too little. I'm watching that right now. That process, it's so amazing
Oh,
with a
it is so
2-year-old.
amazing.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful thing. And that's what, taking the top down idea of the top controls the bottom, then that's all lost. That wonder, that creativity is gone. And you just get
Yeah, because realistically, you don't have a top without a bottom.
right.
It's like if you don't have a base, if you don't have a foundation, like
Mhm.
what do you have up there?
Yeah.
An illusion. That's why it's like some kind of like hologram or something.
Yeah, or the school play. Yeah, or the sock puppets, just Punch and Judy show, telling people things that aren't true. It's
And when
going
it's
on
Well,
forever.
manufactured,
everything that young people today believe is wrong or highly inaccurate. And who was it? It was the head of the CIA years and years ago said, "We will know our plan is complete when everything the American people know is wrong." We're getting there.
Yep. Hmm. Well, up is down and down is up. And there's no right way. It's not like we can put everything right, but we can set it up so it can organize itself. I think that's what's right, is this idea, and that's what life and living things do. They self-organize from one little point. All those cells grow and they become all the things they need to do, and they fold all the proteins they need to fold, because there is some plan, but it's not it's also an open plan. It's open source. So the plan can live and learn and get better.
that's right. It is living. It's a living situation, which means ever changing while maintaining a sense of stability.
Hmm. So it can't happen if we're not part of the plan. It's a different thing that's not going to happen.
I mean, really, like, all the power is within the people, because, like, speaking of going across the street, talking to your neighbors for a couple hours, it's like, the people that and the things that you really experience and really happen to you, that is the real stuff. So when people face up to like the amount of lying that's going on in like the public eye or whatever, it's like, well, luckily those aren't even your real people. So you can just forget about them, forget about the stars, forget about Hollywood, forget about what they're telling you need to think or buy or do. It's like their reign is over. And yeah, like, you know, there's a lot of good art and good stuff that came in the process, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's like we are we are naturally going in a different direction now. And I think, you know, if anybody's not aware of that, and I can't even imagine what it must be like in these inner circles of like corrupt scientists or Hollywood people or whatever.
Maybe
Like,
they're in the same kind of hypnotized fog. They've hypnotized themselves into their own fog, and you know, they can't. They don't understand human beings apparently, and what motivates them.
One thing that the powers that be, especially at the CDC and the FDA, are afraid of is that they lose legitimacy. Because if enough people wake up, then all they have to do is click their heels like Dorothy Gale from Kansas and say, "You guys, you don't exist for us." That's
Yeah,
all they
well,
have to do.
yeah, Deborah made that great point in the chat, that the CDC is, what did she say? It's a private organization in Texas. It has nothing to do with anything. They're just their own entity. So we can click our heels and say, "You're not part of our government. You're not part of anything that matters. Go away.
Be gone with you."
Yeah, be gone." Poof.
and if you don't know, because it's like, of course, these entities are masquerading as helping people. So if you don't know that, and you just go to look up like something really simple, like, should I use hydrogen peroxide on my cat, or like something or whatever, you don't notice if you don't know. But you, like, the first like 4 things will be NIH, and they'll be like, oh, watch out for that, like you might not, you know what I mean? So something that you think is simple advice, they're right there at the top of the feed, giving doubt to simple age old things that, yeah, you want to know about, but not from them.
Yeah, you want to
Right.
know from your grandmothers like us. Or your very
Exactly.
own
Listen to what your grandparents taught you.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Right.
and even winding back to those ancient Vedic grandparents, because after all, if their story has the, you know, the 40, you know, we have 40 weeks gestation for human pregnancy, so it's like it's worked into these stories as, yeah, a connection, a metaphysical connection where spirit and matter meet and weave together.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a great place to stop, I think. That was
Yeah. Well,
it's
I'll just
where
tell you that I'm going to play you guys next week my thing, because I don't have my speaker out here. So I'll get that ready for next week.
All right.
okay, and maybe we can figure out how to get that other video going. Although this was a good one because there was only 2 of us, so we didn't have as much stuff to talk about.
Yeah. Amber's off on her amazing date, and I bet they're
Yeah,
having the best time because, oh
that's
man, I'm still jealous. Wendy sent me, oh, the beginning of my garden. I was like, October, the beginning. I was like, I'm so jealous.
Well, yeah, that's a garden that gets to keep going. We don't get that, Tara. We're in the north, but those southerners, they can do their replant. I wanted to plant carrots again. I think they'll might be okay unless it's a really deep freeze. There's a few things you can do.
Well, we're going to keep on doing them. So
Yeah.
just plugging away here, and 1 week, what do we got? 1 week left of October. So happy birthday, Amber.
Yeah.
Anyways, John, are you frozen?
I think he is.
I think he is.
Frozen.
No.
Well, John,
Okay.
you can play us out and we'll just say goodbye to everybody.
Okay,
And-
so everyone have a great day. Enjoy the weekend. And enjoy plugging into the earth wherever you are, and enjoy each other, and just get ready to gear up for next week.
Yeah, I'm going to enjoy the rain to put out all the smoke and fire.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Rain.
Blessings to you guys over there. Seriously. Just may the rains come. I meant may the rains help you.
They're coming today, and the fires were way later, so they'll go out.
Okay. All right. So I guess we'll go. Thanks, John. Thanks, still version of John. Bye, everybody.